All right, what's going on, Giants fans? You know the news by now, but I want to break it down for you guys. Dave Gettleman has retired, fired. He's fired. And the Giants are retaining Joe Judge. So we'll start with Dave Gettleman. We'll go through all. Before, like and subscribe. We're going to have a bunch of content out, draft stuff. We're going down to the Senior Bowl. This channel is going to be very active in the offseason. I think we're the number one place for Giants content. But let's get into it. Dave Gettleman fired. 19-46 over 4 seasons. This was an epic failure. And I've said the last 3 years he should have been fired after year 2, after year 3, and after year 4. And we'll go by Dave Gettleman's words. He said there was 4 big things he said about in his opening presser. He said he was going to fix the O-line. We want to rush the passer. We want to run the ball, and we're going to stop the run. So let's talk about fixing the offensive line. After 4 years, Thomas is your only piece. And maybe an undrafted free agent in Nick Gates who was injured. And that's a piece you got totally lucky on, an undrafted free agent. You didn't view him as worth drafting over Kyle Lauletta or RJ McIntosh. You got lucky with that. You got very lucky with that piece. And again, he's coming off a broken leg. We don't know if we can bank on him next season, as much as I do love Nick Gates. 4 out of your 5 starters are bad football players. And guess what? Depth is a part of this league and building, especially at the offensive line spot. You have to have depth. But you went into this season, you banked on unproven guys. You banked on Matt Parrott to develop, who had 0 starts last year besides a first quarter when Andrew Thomas was suspended for the first quarter. You banked on that guy to be your starter. And he lost out to Nate Solder, who was your second biggest mistake as GM, was signing Nate Solder to a record contract for the offensive tackle spot. Who was not a very good offensive lineman for the Patriots. He was, Tom Brady covered up a lot of his stuff. And he immediately was bad for the Giants. Every year that he was a New York Giant, he was bad. And Daniel Jones, who held onto the ball a little longer than a guy like Eli Manning, showed that. I mean, he had the worst left tackle production in the NFL. And you banked on Matt Parrott to beat that guy out, and he lost. He lost to a washed-up Nate Solder. Again, you got lucky with Nick Gates as an undrafted free agent. You banked on Shane Lemieux, who was one, who I actually like Shane Lemieux more than most. He's a good run blocker, but he was a bad pass blocker last year, and you banked on him. You banked on unproven guys, and you didn't bring in any depth to battle with those guys. It's one thing to want your young guys, but you brought no real depth into battle with those guys. You know what your depth was? It was 3 guys you added with 1 week left before the season started. You added Matt Skura, who was cut by the Miami Dolphins. You pick swapped 63 spots from the top of the 4th round all the way to the bottom of the 5th round to add Ben Bredesen, who couldn't beat out Matt Skura or Will Hernandez. Will Hernandez, who was, your second-round pick, who's just had the worst year of his entire career. Billy Price, who's on an expiring contract. You traded away a 7th-round piece and a 7th-round pick and a solid piece in B.J. Hill for an expiring Billy Price, who with at least Ben Bredesen you can hope grows, but Billy Price has been in this league a long time. Couldn't break the starting lineup for the Bengals after being a first-round pick. That was your depth, and you needed those guys because you lost guys like Shane Lemieux and Nick Gates. 4 out of these 5 offensive lineman spots have to be replaced. Three at a minimum, because we don't know what Nick Gates is going to be next year. You totally blundered this offensive line. Your only piece is Andrew Thomas, who I love. I'm a big Andrew Thomas guy. Have been since the draft. You screwed the offensive line. Now let's talk about what you said. You want to rush the passer. Well, guess what? Going into year 4, your defensive coordinator and Patrick Graham tried to blitz to start the season and play man coverage. But guess what happened? He had to go back to the bend, don't break defense. Why? Because they couldn't even get pressure while blitzing. You remember that Broncos game? The Giants had the second, like a top 5 blitz rate that week. And they couldn't get to the passer. They could not get to the passer against a Broncos O-line that isn't particularly good. Your biggest investment was Azeez Ojulari, who, again, in year 4, was a 2nd-round picker who has a number 2 rush ceiling. You had no real investment in the edge room after that. 3rd-round guys are not real investments. Nobody in free agency besides Marcus Golden on a cheap prove-it deal, who turned out to be a good player, but he wasn't used in his 2nd year. You traded Jason Pierre-Paul, which is a fine move in itself. In a vacuum, trading Jason Pierre-Paul in the start of a rebuild is fine. But then you take that capital and essentially trade it for Alec Ogletree, who has the same contract. That's the type of stuff that doesn't make sense under Dave Gettleman and the stuff that he said he wanted to do when he came in. You said you wanted to run the ball and stop the run. So you went about it the entire wrong way. You drafted a running back number 2 overall instead of fielding calls or taking what the Jets gave to the Colts. The Colts had the third pick. We had the second pick. We kind of got that exact same package. You could have added Quentin Nelson. You could have added a Braden Smith or somebody in the second round. That's how you run the ball, Dave Gettleman. Not by drafting a running back second overall. You cut Kevin Zeitler, which is somewhat understandable, but you replace his contract with Kyle Rudolph, and you add no competition to an offensive line. So now, going into Saquon Barkley's last year on his contract, he just got outgained by Devontae Booker this season. They added the same amount of rushing yards. Devontae Booker did it on less carries. Your generational running back had 3.7 yards per carry. That's how you wanted to fix the run game. Well, guess what? Year 4, your rushing offense is ranked 24th in the NFL, and you wanted to stop the run. Well, you have the 25th ranked rushing defense in the NFL. This has been a total failure. The draft. Let's just talk about the draft overall. Round 1 has to be hits. Well, let's go through them. Saquon was a horrible pick just because of the running back spot, but he's not even a good player right now. And I know it has to do with injuries, but that's why you don't draft a running back second overall. Daniel Jones shouldn't have his 5th-year option. No matter where you stand on Daniel Jones, if you like Daniel Jones more than most or you can't stand him, we all agree. You should not be extending his 5th-year option after his 3rd season in the NFL. Dexter Lawrence has a decent floor, but he's not an impact player. He should be an impact player to be drafted 17th as a defensive tackle. And he's not even the best defensive tackle on the team. DeAndre Baker, you traded a 4th and 5th round pick to move up 7 spots for him. Not only was he not a good player, he was lazy. He slept in meetings. He had issues, and then obviously got in trouble. Then you have Andrew Thomas, who is amazing. I love Andrew Thomas. And then Kadarius Toney is a to be decided. I think you can pick a side on Toney because of the injuries and stuff. But when he's on the field, he's actually a good player. So we're gonna keep that as a TBD. But it doesn't look like a hit right now. And now let's talk about rounds 3 through 7, which is I think where you make your money in the draft. Are they all going to be hits? Absolutely not. If you get an average player out of those rounds, should you be happy? But after 4 years, you should have some hits in those rounds, and you didn't. You didn't have any big hits. In 4 years, your best players out of those rounds are Lorenzo Carter, not going to be a starter next year. Darius Slayton, not going to be a starter next year. Julian Love, a backup. Tay Crowder, who might be the number 2 inside linebacker, and the only reason he would fit there is because Blake Martinez is so good. And even when Tay Crowder was drafted, he was drafted after T.J. Brunson, who, I watched the film and stuff. I was like, how did they draft this guy in front of him? So if you didn't have the Mr. Irrelevant pick, Tay Crowder wouldn't even be a part of this team. You wasted a pick on Kyle Lauletta. Why would you waste a pick on Kyle Lauletta? Now let's talk about the cap. The Giants have the 5th least projected cap in 2022. Not only did he not hit in the draft, but he had 3 spending sprees in 4 seasons. 2018, adding guys like Nate Solder, Patrick Omameh, Jonathan Stewart. 2019, you didn't spend any money. 2020, you got Blake Martinez, James Bradbury. 2021 was the biggest spending spree of all with Kenny Golladay, Adoree Jackson, and Leonard Williams. Which, by the way, Leonard Williams is a really good player. I'm glad he's on the Giants. But you totally screwed up by trading him on the last year of his deal. And Leonard Williams got all the bargaining power. If you waited till free agency, you could have got him for $12, $13 million. Instead, you're paying him an extra $10 million a year because Leonard Williams' agent knew. I've got this general manager by the balls. And here's the thing that might bother me the most about Dave Gettleman is he worked John Mara. After 2 seasons, with 3 weeks left in the 2019, he threw Pat Shurmur under the bus to save his job. I don't think he truly believed that Pat Shurmur totally needed to be fired. Pat Shurmur developed his quarterback. Pat Shurmur was never brought in to be a defensive coordinator. Again, that offense had issues. No one expected that offense to be good, but I think we were all excited about Daniel Jones after his rookie season, right? And you threw his play caller, the guy who wanted him, under the bus to save your job. You were 3 weeks left in the season. You went to John Mara and you threw him under the bus to save your job, to blame him, make him the scapegoat. And again, I'm not making an argument that, Pat Shurmur should have been kept, but he sure as hell shouldn't have been fired and Dave Gettleman kept. That makes no sense, cycle-wise and personnel-wise. Pat Shurmur was fired for the sins of Dave Gettleman. He had his flaws, but he was fired for the sins of Dave Gettleman. He worried about job security more than setting up the Giants for long-term success. And even you kept things cozy. And then when Joe Judge came in, Joe Judge, fought against some things, got some guys fired in the scouting department. He was a very comfy person, and now he gets to ride into the sunset, which is crazy to me that he wasn't fired, that he gets to get this nice, cozy runaway. So this Dave Gettleman era was a complete failure. Now let's talk about Joe Judge being brought back. He's 10-23 after 2 seasons. It bothers me that Mayer waited until this long to make this decision. This decision should have been made already, whether it was keeping him or firing him. But I think this is a mistake for multiple reasons. One, Joe Judge hasn't proven that he deserves a third season. I do think Joe Judge was screwed by this organization on multiple things, which we'll go through. But it wasn't like Joe Judge was Vic Fangio. Where did Vic Fangio get results really in his 3 seasons? No, but his defenses were dominant. And his offenses were mediocre with a mediocre quarterback. So it's like, what more can you expect out of the guy? He's dealing with what you gave him. Lost Von Miller. Bradley Chubb always injured. Like, he was dealing with what he got. You can make an argument for him. Joe Judge, you really can't make an argument, like a strong argument for him. All the arguments aren't pro-Judge. They're kind of anti what the Giants have done. Dead last in most offensive coordinators the last 2 seasons. Now, here's the thing. They did force Jason Garrett on him. I'm sourced up on that. They forced Jason Garrett on him, not year 1, but also year 2. Joe Judge did want to move on. So I do feel bad that he got, Jason Garrett forced on him. And Jason Garrett firing him midseason was the right thing. And then you finally fire Jason Garrett, and your quarterback gets injured. He hurt his neck on the second play with your new offensive coordinator. And I actually like the game plan under Kitchens in that game. Not good sense, and I don't want Kitchens back, obviously, and I don't think he will be. But here's the thing. You're making the same mistake with Joe Judge that you made with Jason Garrett. You are like, oh, we want to keep continuity. We want to give this guy a chance. The offensive line wasn't good. The receivers weren't good. What was he had to work with it? So now you're going to force Joe Judge on a new general manager. 1, that makes you a less desirable job. And 2, a new general manager might want to totally rebuild this team. But guess what? You can't rebuild when you have a head coach who is not only on the hot seat, but his seat is flaming hot because you waited this long. You didn't back him up. So it's just dysfunction by John Mayer. That's the most frustrating thing to me is John Mayer. I think he's the guy I'm most mad at. But at the same time with this offense, even with Daniel Jones out, Mike Glennon had by far his worst season in every category this year. Not even just like next to his career stats, like individual every season, he had his worst year in every stat. So this offense was broken. And again, I didn't expect this offense to be good when Jason Garrett was fired, but I did expect it to be better. And it was the worst offense I've ever seen those last 6 weeks without Daniel Jones. I mean, you averaged 9.3 points per game. The last 3 games of the year, you averaged 60 passing yards per game. I don't care who the QB is. You should be able to do more than that. You should be able to do more than that. And Joe Judge hasn't earned his keep. The fourth down stuff, being extremely conservative. And then, Joe Judge wants to fix his mistakes. They had a safety versus the Bears game. Then you QB sneak on 2nd and 3rd down. It's like, when he should be getting more aggressive, he becomes more conservative. So that's why, Joe Judge, to me, hasn't earned his keep. Even though there's pros to him, like Patrick Graham. Those guys are tight-knit. He brought in Patrick Graham. That's a smart combo with their defense. The injuries did screw them. Now, the Ravens, they had injuries. Well, the Ravens missed the playoffs, and they are supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. So injuries did screw him, but it's not an excuse for this team to be this bad. And again, the overall personnel sucked because of all the reasons we mentioned before with Dave Gettleman. So I do think that Joe Judge got screwed over. Has been screwed over. And if he was in the 3rd year of his coaching tenure with the 3rd year GM, there was even more argument. But now you're going to force him on a new GM, and that totally screws up the GM search because there's going to be implicit bias on what GM wants to work with Judge. Like, what do you think of Joe Judge? And those are going to be the GMs you hire. So you may miss out on the best candidate because you're tying this guy to Joe Judge. So it's frustrating time in Giants land right now. It really is. So hopefully we get the GM right, and hopefully Joe Judge can have a Zach Taylor year 3 turnaround. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think you shouldn't expect it to happen. So I'm very glad Dave Gettleman's gone. It's too late. Joe Judge, I don't hate him as much as other people. But he did not earn a 3rd year, and especially with a brand new GM. He didn't earn that. And supposedly Joe Judge wants Kevin Abrams to be the GM, according to Jay Glazer. Like, come on, man. Are you trying to save your job, or are you trying to win? Are you trying to tie yourself to someone who's in the organization to make it less likely you're fired? Or are you trying to win? Because I just don't believe that Kevin Abrams should be the general manager. One, you look inside this organization, it's broken. So why would you keep within in a broken organization? So it's just frustrating right now. So we'll have a podcast out tomorrow for you guys, but I wanted to put this instant reaction out there. So hopefully this gets right, man, but it just doesn't feel right. It feels like we're continuing to do half measures as the New York Giants. John Mayer always meddles and makes that one mistake. So I appreciate you guys. Listen to the podcast tomorrow. Until then, let's go Big Blue.